So I'm just going to make this quick and start off with, according to Psychology Today, along with many other sources, they each claim that you shouldn't make promises you can't keep and you shouldn't break them either. In particular, Psychology Today claims that when you break these promises, it tells the person that you don't value them, you don't value the concept of promises, and in turn, it hurts your image. Although I would agree with some of the points, I would like to point out that in certain situations, like high-risk situations, it would be acceptable, and if not, expected for you to make a promise that you couldn't keep. So to test out my theory, I thought I'd ask a couple of people I knew to get their reactions. So I asked a series of questions that started with, what does a promise mean to you?
A promise is
giving your word that you'll do something.
Something that you can uphold.
It could be something major or just a little.
So would you say that when you say you're going to do something, it's a promise?
Yes.
Yeah.
Promises, I'd say, break down into little categories, and an agreement would be one.
Do you expect promises to be kept?
Yes.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Is there a situation where you think breaking a promise is acceptable?
I feel like there are certain situations, you don't always know what people are going through.
It definitely depends.
There's always unforeseeable events in the future.
What about in the case of not knowing what else to say?
I feel like that's partly your fault for agreeing.
You can't just agree.
Yeah, I get the pressure of being on the spot, but you should still try to be as honest as you can be.
What if you didn't want to hurt someone's feelings?
I think it can be okay sometimes, but
there's ways of telling the truth.
Sometimes sparing someone's feelings isn't really what's best for them.
What about in the case of making someone feel better?
It depends on how severe.
I would promise that things are going to get better because I have to stay optimistic.
If it's like a life or death situation, I feel like it wouldn't be more of a promise, but more like a sense of comfort that you're giving that person.
What if you knew that person was thinking about hurting themselves?
Yeah, I think in a dire situation, I would make some promises.
It's okay if you're going to actually, afterwards, try to make an effort to prevent them.
You telling them what they already know isn't gonna change anything. You want them to feel at ease and okay and stuff.
So you would agree that you would make a promise you couldn't keep?
Yes, in that situation.
Did your opinion on breaking promises change after this conversation?
Now that I've actually gone through and kind of listed out how my promise sort of thing goes, I'd say it has. It made me think about the way that I make promises to people.
There's just different ways of upholding promises. There's different situations, and I know sometimes it might be hypocritical, but I don't know.
I think making a promise is still saying that you'll do something, but that doesn't mean that you always have to keep your promises or it's always the best way to keep your promise. I think there are definitely situations in life where you have to break them for the better of yourself or to help someone else.
Wait, can you say that again? Can you define those situations?
If you're making a promise in just an average setting, yeah, you should keep that just to stay as an honest person and to be able to be someone who's dependable. But there's always going to be certain emergency situations, like someone's dying or someone is feeling really depressed or stuff like that, where you need to maybe make a promise in that moment to save you some time or save them some time.
Now, think of a promise you've made that you didn't intend on keeping.
It was in high school, and I was graduating, and I promised my mom I would break up with my high school boyfriend.
Whenever my niece was smaller and she would go to the store, she'd always want to get a toy or something, and then she'd start throwing a fit. And so I would try to calm her down and be like, yeah, we're about to go and get you something.
Whenever I visited my family in Venezuela, I made the promise we're going to keep in touch all the time, and that's not the case.
Was there a way you could have avoided breaking that promise, or was it necessary?
I think that promise was totally unnecessary, and I shouldn't have made it.
Yeah, there are other ways, but I think we naturally go to those little lying situations just to get it through.
It was a dishonest moment in my life, and the dishonesty just continued, and it was really bad.
Was your lie acceptable?
I don't think it was acceptable because because I did it for selfish reasons, just so I wouldn't have to explain myself.
In a way, I mean, it's not acceptable.
If it's something that's going to affect them later on, then, I mean, you need to tell them the truth eventually.
Does this make you a bad person?
I don't think so.
No.
I think it just makes me human. I mean, no one's perfect. No one can be truthful all the time.
So now, what are your final thoughts about breaking promises?
I think not keeping promises is okay.
I think if you're thinking in general for the better of yourself or for someone else, then it's okay to break that promise.
In that moment, my intention is to, if it's going to make the situation better, I'm going to do it.
As you can see, when put into context, many would agree that making a promise you couldn't keep, particularly in high-risk situations, would be seen as okay. And although a promise is a promise, it doesn't have to be kept all the time.